Alright guys, in this lesson we're going to discuss the difference between a normal texture using a card and then using a camera Project3D, using a separate camera to project our textures onto our geometry or image planes. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Right here I have a basic scene setup. I have just a checkerboard 1 and 2, and we have two different cards set up in here into our scene node, as well as a scanline renderer, our camera, and our axis. Okay, so I'm selecting my scanline render, make sure I have 1 on here. I'm going to hit spacebar to navigate to my 3D. So I'm going to go in here. This should be my scene. Went ahead and already moved the camera back just a little bit. I could go ahead and let's grab this card right off the bat, and we can move it a little off to the side and something like this. Okay, so we know for a fact that these are physically on the card as 2D textures. I can't do anything with them. It's not, completely independent from my camera. So if I select my camera, nothing really happens. So let's go back into our node space. Let's go ahead and create a Project3D for this blue one, and then a separate camera altogether. I'll show you guys the difference between these two processes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit tab on my keyboard. I'm going to go ahead and spell out Project3D. There we go. Automatically, you guys notice that there's going to be not a bunch to this node right off the get-go. We have the normal default node, and then we have the Project3D project on both front or back. Okay, for now, let's leave it on both, and let's leave crop for on. Okay, so right from the get-go, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We have our input, which is going to be sticking directly into our checkerboard, and then we have another input for our camera. So this is where we're going to create a brand new camera and have this input connected. Okay, one thing you guys do have to pay attention whenever you're connecting this Project3D is that this Project3D cannot go underneath your card. Okay, it has to go above your card. Okay, notice how if I try to do something like this, you're not going to have the ability to do so. Alright, so let me go ahead and just dump this in here. There we go. And now obviously we do need another camera to project this texture onto our 2D card. So I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, grab my camera, and then I'm going to hit N on my keyboard. Let's rename this. Let's do ProCam for my projection camera. Okay, so I'm going to grab this camera and input it in here as well. We also need to create an axis node, so if we do some animation, of course, so let's do some access just in case this is a buffer. There we go. So we have a fairly simple script set up right now. Let's go ahead and hit spacebar, and right from the get-go we have our camera in here. Notice how earlier, if I go ahead and disable this, we have our image plane in here, but the minute we connect this in here, I'm going to hit D to enable it. Our image is completely gone. But if I go ahead and select my card too, notice that the card is still there. Okay, this happens just because we haven't moved our camera yet. So if I go ahead and let me actually disable these cameras, there we go, that if I select my plane here and the camera, it's going to be right on the same plane here. So our projection isn't actually working at all for us. Alright, so what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to go ahead and grab my axis node, and the minute I'm going to start pulling this camera back, I should see the texture of, there we go, of our checkerboard. So I pull this back this way, we do have the effect. Okay, so again, this one's going to be a physical texture. So if I move this left and right, I can hold down the command key, rotate this, it's going to be stuck on the texture. But if you guys notice, if I go ahead and grab my card too, since we're using a physical camera to project this texture, I could go ahead and if I grab the rotate tool, rotate this left and right, you're getting this kind of deformation, and that's just because we're using a projection for this, just like a projection in a lecture hall or anything like that. Okay, so if I let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So card 2, uniform scale, there we go. Obviously if I make sure or make my card too small, notice that it will clip your texture evenly. Okay, so we're gonna have that issue. It really wouldn't matter for us. We could probably make this texture even bigger. So if I grab my camera, let's push this back even further. There we go. So for instance, if I want my my texture to be a little bit bigger or smaller, I could easily just push this back and forth, right? Because it's hooked up dependently with my camera here. Okay, so again, if I go ahead and rotate this left and right, we have some kind of deformation. Pull this way, and move this back and forth, you will see that it's getting projected. We can't really do this with a normal card that we have here. We could rotate it, obviously. We could deform it this way. Later on, we could deform these cards. But something for a projection, it is not going to work. Okay, and these are the two biggest differences between using a Project3D and just like a regular card, which is going to be right here.